And from your memory, what happened?
I know the sergeant was giving him a correct training counseling. I believe it was for being late or something like that. After Mr. Manning, I think, got a little upset about what was going on, and he dumped a table.
Stop there. You say dumped a table. What do you mean he did?
Well, he got angry, and he slammed his fist on the table, and he grabbed onto the table, and he lifted it, and put his arm under it, and lifted it over, and dumped the computers onto the floor.
What size of table are we talking about?
The same size as the prosecutor's desk.
So roughly maybe 8 by 3.
Yes, sir.
Once he did that, what happened?
There was a little commotion, and I went and detained him.
Before you detained Mr. Manning, then Specialist Manning, did you see him do anything?
I felt that he was going towards the weapons rack, and I felt that I needed to detain him.
Why did you feel that way?
Because he was very visually distraught, and he had already dumped a table filled with government computers. So you don't know what's going to happen, so I acted.
And when you say you restrained him, what did you do?
I grabbed him and put him in a full Nelson and set him on a bench.
And a full Nelson, that terminology, is that a wrestling terminology?
Yes, sir.
And when you say full Nelson, can you describe what you did?
Yes, you put both arms under the armpits and on the back of his head, and then two fingers behind his head.
All right. And once you did that, what happened?
Then we just talked. I told him to relax. When he relaxed, I let him sit down and we talked like adults. And then he said, "I'm calm, let me go." I let him go. We sat down and talked. I told the sergeant to leave, and he calmed down and we walked out of the area and had a cigarette.
And based upon what you saw, was this reported to the master sergeant at any time?
Yes, sir.
And how do you know that?
I told the master sergeant. Everybody told the master sergeant, and I believe he went to mental health at that time.
From your perspective, did you see any, I guess besides mental health, did you see any corrective training or any sort of action due to what occurred during the counseling session?
No, sir.
Do you know why not?
No, sir.
From your perspective, was that type of conduct that you witnessed something that was acceptable within the area?
No, sir.
And why?
Because he dumped a table full of government computers.
Are you familiar with what a write-up is?
Yes, sir.
And how so?
After all this, I have been put in roles where I have been led to advise or come in contact with write-ups, sir.
So prior to this deployment, were you familiar with what a write-up was?
No, sir.
Now, based upon your understanding of what a write-up is, do you have an understanding when you would file a write-up?
Yes, sir.
And when is that?
After an incident like that would have taken place.
And you say like that, the incident that you witnessed with Mr. Manning and the sergeant?
Yes, sir.
You said on direct that you tried to handle things at the lowest level. What did you mean by that?
In the military, you are told to handle at the lowest level so you don't overkill an incident.
So you were told by the master sergeant that you were not responsible for any soldier's misconduct.
Yes, ma'am.
And what was your primary mission during the 09 to 10 deployment?
It was product supervision, ma'am.
So you were told to focus on that work product.
Yes, ma'am.
The master sergeant would handle the soldier issue so you could focus on your mission,
Yes, ma'am.
which was
Intelligence.
the 09 to 10. That was your third deployment.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the shop run in an orderly manner?
Yes, ma'am.
The master sergeant ran a direct line between the soldiers and him,
Yes, ma'am.
and there was no issues with that.
No, ma'am.
In fact, all the leadership at that time had an open door policy,
Yes.
and it seemed to work for the shop.
Yes.
It was actually a very close shop.
Very close.
And how was the captain at the time?
He was awesome.
He did a good job?
He did a terrific job.
Were they all trained appropriately before you deployed?
Yes, ma'am.
Was someone always available for junior analysts to ask questions when you were in theater?
Yes, ma'am.
You said now you know about write-ups. At the time you didn't?
Right.
And you said this might be something that you would do a write-up for?
Yes, ma'am.
But you could see why somebody wouldn't do a write-up for it as well.
Yes, ma'am.
You typically do write-ups for trust-related issues, in your opinion,
Yes, ma'am.
so it could go either way.
It could.
And you would write up for when somebody went to mental health.
No, ma'am.
If you recall, when did the captain come to headquarters?
I believe it was in January.
So after this incident.
Yes, sir.